Very good morning, it's Penuel the Black Pen. Today's video is sponsored by Uletiwe Tole, who will be releasing her album Ubuhle on the 26th of August. I wish her the best of luck and I'm looking forward to how successful that album is going to be. I'm going to be posting a link of her YouTube channel and a link to her website so that you can check out some of the music that she's made, and so that on the 26th of August when she drops, you are able to contact her and be able to get her music on all the major platforms. Today, this video is also sponsored by my 3 books, or at least my 3 business books. I think the first one I wrote was Fuck Fear, which is basically talking about how to use your fears, how to use other people's fears, how to manage those fears so that you can create money. Because 2 very fundamental emotions that drive human beings, at least in the money creation process, is fear and greed. And if you can find a way to manage those, you can make and amass a lot of money. The second book is Passive Income, which is basically talking about business systems. The idea of building business systems so that you do not have to work for money. There's something called active income. That's waking up in the morning, going to work. If you don't go to work, you don't get paid. Then there's passive income where you earn money even when you are not working. So when you own business systems like franchises, like property, like shares, you can then begin earning passive income. And then the last one is the rise and fall of the NSC, how I made and lost my millions, which chronicles a story of some of my business successes and some of my business failures, which I think is a very educational book. And it also just gives an insight on my life as well. If you would like any of my 3 books in ebook PDF format, you can get each of them for 50 Rand each. If you would like a hard copy, you can get them each for 100 Rand. I'm going to drop the email address that you can email if you'd like a copy of each of my 3 business books. Thank you very much. Last night I had a very great evening. I was invited to the gala dinner of the ETDP SETA. The ETDP is the Education, Training and Development SETA in South Africa. And SETAs are sector education development, is it what? SETA, Sector Education Training Authority. I stand to be corrected. Sector Education Training Authority. I'm not sure if we've got between 21 or 33 SETAs, but the SETAs basically ensure that there is training and skills development in all the various industries across South Africa's economy. What the SETAs do is they collect money. There's something called the Skills Development Levy, which is part of BEE. They collect a skills development levy from employers within industries, and then they take that money for learnerships, for internships, for apprenticeships, etc. And they upskill and they train people in those spaces, and they obviously try to give them work opportunities so that they can get paid and become part of the mainstream authority. So I was invited by the ETDP SETA to come to their gala dinner as they were celebrating Women's Month. It was an amazing experience, and the women looked amazing, of course. And I'm very thankful for the ladies that invited me to come through to that event. I got a chance to speak as well, and my topic was the role of men in modern society and how to build societies better. You know, as much as they were celebrating, they unfortunately had to drop some of the heavier content, especially speaking to the men and the black men in particular. How they've dropped the ball, how from the time black men or our forefathers lost the land to white people in particular, the colonizers, how since then black men have never really found their dignity again. They've never really been able to have their values to create a dominant culture. If you compare black African men in South Africa to the Indian Muslim men, the Chinese men, and of course the white men, in particular the English and the Afrikaans, you can see that black men still don't have land. Black men seem to be in broken families. Black men don't have jobs. Black men are begging white, Indian, Chinese people for jobs, and they just seem to not have found their way. And it's time that those black men rise. And other men, of course, not just black men, other men from other races who feel lost, who are poor, who are not leaders in their families, and who are not willing to hold hands with the women in society to create better societies for all. So that was pretty awesome for me, and I hope my talk touched some of the men there and also touched some of the women there, because one of the things I mentioned is that as cool as it may look for people to be like, oh, you're doing so well as a single mother, being a single mother is not normal. And it's important for single mothers to try and find the fathers of their children, hold them accountable and get them to be responsible for their kids, failing which those single mothers must go and find fathers for their children. Whether that is in the form of another boyfriend, another husband, it could be the mother's father, it could be the mother's brother, it could be good male role models in your neighborhood, your neighbors, etc., who are positive male role models for your children. It's important that children have a female role model and a male role model in their lives. It is not normal for kids to just be raised by a woman, and it is not right for the development of the child. What was also cool at the dinner last night was I got to meet for the first time Uskumba, one of the biggest stand-up comedians in this country, one of the biggest personalities in this country, because he is also a radio DJ with Thomas Msengana on Kaya FM. He does various MCing gigs, etc. And we had a really, really cool chat. And he gave me some amazing advice about the idea, or rather around the idea, that I am now starting to gain traction in South Africa. People are starting to notice me. They're starting to give me attention. They're starting to listen to what I have to say. And it is important that I keep my head. It is important that I don't lose myself, and that I carry on being a positive impact to the people of South Africa, at least. We spoke about the great success of Trevor Noah, especially his European tour, where he was selling out 14,000, 15,000 seater arenas in places like Norway, Denmark, Belgium. I don't even know if the people there speak English, but the idea of how has Trevor Noah managed to keep his sanity and still remain himself without the noise. I was asking Skumba how he himself, even though he walks in the streets and people scream his name, how has he maintained that sanity? And he's told me that he's used some of the advice of Kevin Hart of keeping people that have always been there in your life around you. People that don't see you as a celebrity, who support you, of course, who are very proud of you for your success, but who still keep it real with you. And they're like, you are still the gent that I grew up with. So I don't care if you're super famous, if you're super rich. I am still here, and I'm still going to tell you when you're messing up. I'm still going to tell you some of the things that people won't tell you that will help build you. And I'm very thankful for that. We also spoke on, or he also touched on, the idea that some of the most talented people in this country die very young, and in the world in particular. He mentioned Brenda Fassie as an example. He mentioned DJ Kabzela, who was literally carrying YFM on his back, 1 million listeners on his own. And how Kabzela came at a time to interview people like prisoners, which had not been done before, who was very relatable and who was just having normal conversations on radio, not very formal, and was very influential in the radio space, and how some of these people passed away very young. We spoke about Tupac, we spoke about Biggie, and he was saying, just be very, very careful and don't be one of those people who makes mistakes. You may be very impactful and influential, but make sure that you don't make silly mistakes which end up leading to the loss of life. Very appreciative of Grootman for giving me that wisdom and that advice. I also got to meet the highly decorated Dr. Maureen Tong, who's a PhD, I believe, in international law from one of the universities in France. She's also studied, I believe, in Sweden. And she was part of the people that set up the Thabo Mbeki African Leadership Institute. And she has been part of so many boards and organizations that have made a huge impact in South Africa, on the African continent, and even globally. She's also an executive coach, and she did a great job of getting the women in the audience very psyched. She shared some of her experiences, telling us that just as a young girl from Pampierstad, a place that doesn't even show up on the South African map, the things she has been able to achieve in her life, and how women need to not humble themselves as they have been taught, and they need to raise their hands, promote themselves, and be very proud of the work they do. And they must be very comfortable in valuing themselves at the right way and not undervalue themselves, especially in places like performance management, in your work space. Don't underscore yourself. Where there are leadership positions, where there are opportunities to serve, where there are opportunities to network with decision makers, make sure that as a woman, you're putting your hand up and you're saying, I will do that, and I will not just humble myself. And make sure that you try and balance the family work life. It should not be that as a woman, just because you have a family, just because you have kids, just because you have a home, you can no longer strive to become something amazing in the spaces you're in. because men don't have that gender penalty where just because I have kids, just because I have a family, I cannot become as ambitious as I can be. And I really enjoyed and appreciated listening to her as well, even though she was largely addressing the women in the audience. I think lastly, I just saw that trending it may be March 2018, model Lerato Moloi accused tall Esmo Mongezi Mahlangu of rape. Apparently they were on the set of a TV series. It may be in the Western Cape. And that case has dragged on and finally reached its conclusion now in August, maybe 2 days ago, I think on the 16th of August, where Umongezi, tall Esmo, was finally acquitted, meaning that he was found not guilty of the charges. Obviously, we're in Women's Month. Obviously, gender-based violence, rape, the oppression and exploitation of women is constantly in the news, and it's something worth discussing. But now what this is doing is it's again leading us to some of these sensitive conversations of how do you prove rape effectively, because it is very sensitive and difficult to prove. What is a rape kit is a conversation we need to have with young girls. How do we speak to young boys and young men to ensure that they are not violating women? That we have to get away from this culture of she's playing hard to get. If she is looking like she's not sure, you need to stop. Making sure that both men and women are not putting themselves in spaces where there's a potential chance of rape or maybe even false rape allegations. Why are you going home with strange men you've never met before, especially when you're drunk or when you're tipsy? And some of those sensitive conversations on how to ensure that we lower the rape stats, how to make sure that we empower and educate women on how to protect themselves, and even if unfortunately they do get raped, how to ensure that they get justice, and then teaching young men how to also protect themselves from false rape allegations, making sure that they defend other women from potentially getting raped, and making sure that women get justice where those men can help them. One of the very difficult conversations now is, now that Tort Esmo has been found not guilty, does this automatically mean that Lerato Moloi was lying? And that now becomes a polarizing topic in this country in particular. Of the 100 cases, the 100 rape cases that actually get opened, assuming that the bulk of them never even have cases open, of the 100 rape cases that are open in this country, only 2 of them ever lead to a successful conviction. So out of 100 guys, only 2 guys actually ever go to jail. So of the 98 guys that are left, is it because they really are innocent? Is it because the rape kit wasn't that great? Is it because the lady herself took too long to open the case? I think I read somewhere that Lerato Moloi took a while to actually open the case, which makes it very difficult to gather some of the evidence needed. Just the complexity of the whole process and the trial, and the fact that the victim has to sit across the perpetrator while waiting for this case, and how that becomes trauma in itself. How the magistrate, any judge, any of the lawyers, when they cross-examine the victim, how they seem to somehow strip the victim of even more dignity, and it becomes another form of abuse in that. Pushing her, are you sure he raped you? Where were you? Why were you dressed like that? Etc., which is highly violating. But how do we solve these things? For a lot of men, they say, well, if a guy is found innocent, the girl must be charged because it means she was lying. And that's not always the case. Just because someone is found not guilty, it doesn't mean they are innocent. It means that when you look at the various processes of the trial, they did not tick all the boxes which ensure without a shadow of a doubt that this person did it. It just means there isn't enough evidence. It doesn't necessarily mean they did not do it, which makes this thing even more complicated. As much as I speak about financial literacy and how people need to understand how money works, how the economy works, as much as I speak about political literacy and how people don't understand what their vote means, we also need to speak about legal literacy and the fact that people don't understand what the Constitution is, how it works, how our courts work, and how the law just generally works in this country. I personally have issues with our legal system because I do believe it favors rich people. Poor people, just as an easy example, if I have money and you don't have money and we both get arrested, I can pay and get bailed out and go home. If you don't have the money, you cannot post bail and you have to sit in jail. That's already unfair, and it's based on money. So we need to have some of these very, very important conversations. I can't even say I'm happy for Toles Mo for not being found guilty. I can't even say I feel sorry for Lerato Moloi or I hope she will appeal the case. It is such a complicated, messy matter. And more than anything, I hope both of them will be okay. I hope both of them will find peace and healing. I hope both of them and their families will somehow find some type of justice in this and just be okay. Our society is already tough enough. And I hope that we can do better as citizens. Pin you all the black pen, and I hope that you'll have a great day. And for those of you who want to sponsor my videos, I'll drop the email in the description below and you can hit me up and sponsor one of my videos. Have a great day, man. I love you. Cheers.